Welcome to today's The Environmental Edge, where we're gonna dive into the growing crisis under our feet, the looming shortage of landfill space in Ontario. Now, pause for a moment and recall the last item you tossed into the trash. Was it truly just a waste, or could it have a second life? This question isn't just about what we throw away, it's a reflection on our daily choices and the impact on our planet. I'm your host, Aaron. Dive deep into what it means for us and future generations. I'm here today with two waste management experts, Anson and Brendan. Welcome, Brendan. Now, can you tell us more about this topic?
Our topic for today is the lack of landfill space in Ontario. We're actually just talking about this before we started recording. It's insane the way the government is handling landfills in Ontario. We're not quite hitting the mark on diverting waste, especially from places like businesses and industries. And when we talk about expanding or opening new landfill sites, well, that process is tangled in with delays and uncertainties. So if we don't step up our game in recycling and streamlining approval of new landfills, we're headed towards a situation where we simply won't have enough space for our waste.
Despite past advances, including composting and specialized recycling, we're facing a looming crisis. In 2011 alone, Waterloo generated over 192,000 tons of residential waste, with landfill space projected to max out by 2031. It's clear, our innovation in waste diversion, while commendable, haven't kept pace with the volume of waste we're producing. This is a wake-up call. We've made strides, but the journey towards sustainable waste management is far from over.
I was just reading an article about waste management. It was by the Toronto Star. It was about a 2-minute read by Rocco Rossi. And he was talking about if Ontario wants to improve waste management, it must change things in the long term.
I thought we solved this problem already with our recycling programs.
That's just it. A vast majority of Canada thinks this problem is already solved, which is why the problem is continuous. To this date, Canada still sends millions of tons of waste to the US every year. But despite this, Ontario is set to run out of landfill space by the end of the decade. That's just 6 years away. We started the recycling program with the blue boxes, which is great and spread all around the world now, but the problem is we're still producing far too much waste, because the amount of recycling is quite constant, but the amount of waste produced is just ever increasing, totaling around 11.5 billion tons per year. Now we send 3.5 to the States, but that's still 8 million tons that's being dumped in our landfills every year. The amount of trash we generate is far too much to fit in our landfills.
Why don't we just build more landfills?
That's the problem. Landfills take a lot of time, and you have to go through a lot of bureaucratic hurdles in order to build them. Plus, they're not politically popular. So, if it is that we continue at the rate we are now, we're going to have a waste management crisis. It's just how we deal with it depends on how the government acts now and tries to preemptively help.
How do we avoid a crisis in the future then?
To avoid a crisis in the future, we have to look at where the waste is coming from. Only about a third of it is from households. 60% of waste is either from businesses or from people walking out and about. That's often dealt with using private waste disposals that often just go to landfills. In order to improve in the future, we have to have private corporations that help deal with 60% of our waste, and governments that have incentives to help us manage waste, working together in order to build more landfills in the future in order to try to minimize the effect of the waste management crisis. What about you, Anson? Did you read anything else that was interesting?
Yes, I was just reading an interesting article on the complexities of waste management in Ontario's Waterloo region.
When you mentioned waste management, I think of recycling and compost. What's happening in Waterloo?
Well, Brennan, it's a fascinating situation. Waterloo has been on the forefront of waste diversion strategies with the blue box and green bin programs, aiming to compost and recycle as much as possible. Yet, despite the increased diversion through organic composting and recycling, the landfill's days are numbered without significant intervention.
How are they planning to address this?
The region is exploring several alternatives. One, expanding the organics collection to increase its capture rate, and boosting recycling efforts beyond their already high capture rates, and even considering incineration with energy recovery as a waste minimization strategy.
Incineration, huh? That sounds pretty extreme.
Yeah, that's because it is, Brendan. It's a contentious option, given its potential environmental impacts. But with the current pace of waste generation, traditional landfilling and even enhanced recycling and composting might not suffice. It's a complex balance between environmental sustainability and practical waste management needs.
So what's the ideal solution here?
The study suggests that a combination of expanding existing waste diversion programs and exploring new waste minimization strategies like incineration might be necessary. It's about extending the life of the current landfill while mitigating environmental impacts. Moreover, this technology is gaining traction in Canada, but there's still a long way to go. Adoption depends on several factors, including public acceptance, environmental regulations, and economic considerations.
That's really interesting. I have to see how these strategies evolve and how they can serve as a model for other regions. Aaron, what did you read about?
Yes, Brendan. I actually come across a study by Italian team. They've been looking at how waste from landfills can leak into the ground and contaminate our drinking water. It is a very serious problem as our drinking water is no longer safe, also harmful to our environment. The research itself just shows us how important it is to keep a close eye on landfills and make sure they're managed properly. Now, you may be wondering, what can we do about this? Well, that's where another piece of research comes in. By someone named Smith, they look at how places in Europe deal with waste in very different ways. Instead of letting the waste pile up, they turn them into energy. Yes, you heard it right. So waste don't just sit there, it gets transformed into something useful. So by burning those garbage, it turns into the energy that we could use in daily electricity. So this is something that we can learn from them to solve the problems in Ontario, to tackle down our waste problem. To close, Ontario landfill issue is big, but we have solutions. By thinking circular, reducing, reusing, recycling, we can tackle it. Let's take a small step towards a sustainable future. Thank you for listening, and remember, every effort towards better waste management helps our planet. Catch you next time.